Hello and welcome. I am Vidyadhar Tirak. In this episode, we explore a very simple but very deep question. How does raw experience become structured, justified knowledge? Or in pragma-sophic language, how do facts and truths arise and how do they finally fuse into verity? Let us begin with the big picture. Human life is flooded with experiences, sensations, emotions, thoughts, interactions. Experience by itself is not yet knowledge. It is only when experience is stabilized, structured, and justified that it becomes what I call verity. Verity is knowledge that is both coherent and reality tested. The figure presents this entire arc. At the left, we begin with raw experience. Through repeated encounters, patterns in this experience crystallize into facts. In parallel, our symbolic and conceptual activity using language, mathematics, diagrams, and algorithms generate candidate truths. Neither stream is sufficient on its own. Facts need conceptual interpretation, truths need experiential anchoring. Only when both pass their respective tests and meet each other, we get verity, the justified knowledge that we can rely on for further reasoning and eventually for wise action. To make this precise, Pragma-Sophy introduces a key distinction shown in the figure, the two-world scheme. On one side, we have the experiential world, the world of direct encounters, measurements, observations, and inner states. This is where facts live. A fact is a stabilized pattern of experience, something that keeps recurring in a reliable way externally or internally. On the other side, we have the descriptor world, the world of symbols, models, and formalisms. This is where truths live. A truth is not simply out there, it is engineered in here, in our conceptual machinery. Truths arise when we build models and apply rules of inference and derive statements that are logically coherent. The crucial point is that these are not two disconnected universes, they are tightly coupled. Facts provide the content that truths must answer to. Truths provide the structure that gives facts their place and meaning. The whole episode is about how these two worlds talk to each other. Before we can talk about facts or truths, we must first talk about systems. The figure shows the act of drawing a system boundary. This is a cognitive decision. We slice reality into this is the system I care about and this is the environment. This boundary making is both practical and philosophical. It is practical because without selecting a domain, we are overwhelmed by complexity. It is philosophical because the boundary reflects purpose and interest. What is inside the boundary becomes relevant, what is outside the boundary becomes the background. In pragma-sophy, a system is not just discovered, it is constructed as an epistemic container. Only after we have such a container, we can meaningfully speak of system behavior, system properties, and eventually systems knowledge. The generation of truths and facts always happens with respect to some system, explicitly or implicitly bounded. Once a system is bounded, we begin to model it. The figure shows the model spectrum. It is a matrix, a progression from which rich but informal representations to highly precise but more abstract ones. At one end, we have the natural language descriptions, stories, narratives, and everyday explanations. These are intuitive and accessible but often vague. Moving along the spectrum, we encounter graphical models, diagrams, schematics, conceptual maps, which add to structural clarity. Further along, we reach mathematical models where relationships are encoded in equations and formal structures. At the far end, we arrive at algorithmic models which can be executed on machines, allowing simulation, optimization, and large scale computation. There is no single best modeling style. Each has strengths and weaknesses. What matters is fit for purpose. Together, they form the modeling toolkit from which the descriptor world constructs its candidate truths about the system. A model becomes cognitive engine when we set it in motion. The inference flowchart shows this operational cycle. We start with the input, data coming from experiential side, measurements, observations, or even introspective reports. The next stage is abstraction. We filter, condense, and retain what is relevant for the system under study. Then comes formalization. These abstractions are encoded in the chosen modeling language, verbal, graphical, mathematical, or algorithmic. Once the model is formalized, we can run it. We simulate, we calculate, we infer. The output is a set of statements, predictions, or explanations. These are candidate truths. They are logically generated by the model, but they are not yet justified. The descriptor world has spoken, but it has not yet been cross examined. The first cross examination happens entirely inside the descriptor world. The figure showing the axiomatic layer structure represents logical justifications, sometimes called as coherence validation. Here we ask, given our actions, definitions, and inference rules, are the derived statements internally consistent? Do they follow logically, or have we smuggled in hidden assumptions? Are these contradictions or circular arguments? This stage does not yet compare our statements with reality. It only checks whether our house of concepts is structurally sound. A statement can be coherent yet false, but not no statement can be justified truth if it is incoherent. Logical justification is therefore necessary but not sufficient condition on the way to verity. Let us now return to the experiential side. The figure is the dual pipeline diagram. It shows that facts and truths arise from two distinct but parallel pipelines. The upper pipeline shows the path we just traced from model building through inference to candidate truths and then to logical justification. On the lower pipeline, starting from raw experience, repeated patterns gradually stabilize into facts. Facts do not come from deduction, they come from interaction. When something happens again and again under similar conditions, it begins to solidify in our cognitive and cultural memory. Examples are metal expands when heated, or this pain arises when I move in that particular way. Such regularities are the building blocks of factual knowledge. Dual pipeline reminds us that both streams must ultimately meet. But just as truths require justification, so do facts. The figure shows the fact validation framework. It depicts how facts are tested and strengthened. We do not validate facts, we strengthen them. No, for external facts, justification comes through repeatability, intersubjective agreement, measurement, and instrumentation. Different observers using calibrated tools obtain similar results under comparable conditions. This builds the evidential resilience. For internal facts, the mechanisms differ, but the logic is similar. Introspective consistency, repeatedly recognizing the same inner state, behavioral expression, and how these states translate into action. Communicative resonance is whether others can understand and report similar experiences. And in modern science, correlations with brain and body signatures all contribute to the credibility of internal facts. In both domains, the fact is not a single observation but a pattern that has survived systematic attempts to disconfirm it. Now we are ready for the key pragma-sophic notion, verity. The figure shows the meeting point of truth and fact. On one side, we have the candidate truth that has passed the coherence test inside the descriptor world. On the other side, we have a stabilized fact that has passed empirical tests in experiential world. Verity emerges only when the two align, when the logically coherent statement corresponds to the experienced and conquered fact. This is the dual criteria of verity, logical coherence plus empirical correspondence. If either side fails, we do not have justified knowledge. A theory that is elegant but contradicted by evidence must be revised or abandoned. A regularity that is observed but does not fit in any coherent model invites us to refine our concepts. Verity is therefore dynamic and provisional. It is the best justified contact we have with reality at a given stage of our modeling and measuring capabilities. Finally, the figure integrates everything into the full epistemic cycle. We begin with raw experience. Through repeated engagement, this stabilizes into facts. Facts are then organized and interpreted through models in the descriptor world, generating candidate truths. These truths undergo logical justification. The justified truths are then checked back against the stabilized facts. When both tests are passed, we achieve verity, a unit of justified knowledge. But the cycle does not stop here. New verities change how we see the world, which systems we define, what we choose to measure next, and which models are built. In this way, knowledge is not a static warehouse but a living architecture that co evolves with our experience and our purposes. Epistemic groundwork is not an end in itself, it is the necessary foundation for the next step, moving from what is justified to what is good, appropriate, or wise to do. In other words, from verity, the truths and facts, to value, the morals and norms. In the next episode, Pragma-Sophy, we will extend the architecture into axiological domain and explore how justified truths and facts inform our ethical and normative frameworks. Pragma-Sophy is Prajna Yajna. Please subscribe to my channel and visit my website if you are interested in more explorations into actionable knowledge and systemic thinking. For a deeper understanding, you can read the essay which corresponds to this episode on my website. Thank you. Stay tuned.